Welcome to Masters of Self University podcast, your highest source of sacred truths and universal wisdom. Hello, beautiful souls. I'm Rachel Fiori, mystic, spiritual teacher, psychic healer, and founder of Masters of Self University. Join our journey of soul transformation as we deep dive into this latest episode.
Quick announcement, we are currently filling our May group class. If you're interested in learning the work that we offer here at MSU, we are filling a group to begin the end of May. So if you're interested in learning the power within, how to awaken and connect to your own internal source of divine power, and how to see and heal all those programs and wounds that we've all accumulated in our lifetime, this is the course for you. This is the group classes that we offer. We're currently enrolling students now, and we've got 4 more positions available. So if you want to be one of those people, please follow the link below, sign up for a free consultation, and I hope you enjoy this podcast. Thank you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Masters of Self University podcast. I'm your host, Ellie Lee.
And I'm your host, Danny Morley.
And today we are joined by mystical coach of oneness, Ellie Armstrong, everybody.
Hi. Hello.
Welcome, mystical coach of oneness.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's very exciting. I love the upgrade title. Brilliant. Very fitting.
For anyone listening, we have gone through a transformation, I guess, within ourselves. We are now certified mystical coaches of oneness, not certified mystical life coaches anymore. And on that note, as a certified mystical coach of oneness, Emily, what are you going to be teaching to us all today? What are we going to be talking about?
So the topic of today is ancestral healing or generational healing, and how it fits in with this work with MSU. So I will take it away. Okay, so my ancestral healing has kind of been balled in with all of the inner child healing I've been doing. So for anyone that's unfamiliar with generational healing, it's really just being able to heal some of the traumas that are in our DNA, are carried in our cellular memory, are stored within us, that come from our predecessors. You know, it's the most immediate with mum, dad, of course, and then grandparents, but then it's also further back than that. And it can reach right back into the far regions of generations. And there are studies available now that suggest that at least 5 generations back, the memories that your ancestors experienced will be in your body. I think it's actually even further back than that when we get into the realm of energetics. I think anything's possible. You know, I think a lot of, and I feel from some of the kind of healings I've ventured into, quite by accident, honestly, and not realizing at the time that's what they were. But, you know, it's even gone as far back as the original mother wound, you know, whatever the Eve is, and whatever that is, there's an energy there that where a lot of trauma like originates. And so it's been a really interesting part of the journey to incorporate where I can and where it kind of opens up the full gambit of trauma healing. You know, it's not just for me about this lifetime and my childhood and subsequent events that happened, and healing those. It's also, you know, I want to heal completely. That's my aim. And so I need to get every crumb, and that includes some of this work too. And actually I'm starting to realize of late that reaches out really deep and wide. And there's much more to be done on that. So that is part of what I'm going to be focusing on going forward, is starting to, in a really purposeful way, invite in some of the generational healing.
And how do you know that what you're healing is generational?
So I can give you an example. It's probably easier to speak to an example. And this was my very first insight into generational healing. And, you know, as I alluded to at the beginning, it's really featuring some trauma that's not mine and being able to support healing that. So lineage healing. And the very first experience and exposure I had to ancestral healing was a complete shock, honestly. I'd been doing the work with Rachel for maybe 4 or 5 months, very, very little amount of time. And I got the hang of it. You know, I started doing the work, started practicing, really rudimentary level, but felt really confident with it sort of 4 months in, having done a lot of practice, having taken the coach certification, and moving into my second half of the 6 months. And I was like, right, I've got this. You know, I can start opening up to a lot more triggers that aren't just happening now, but they're previous ones. So they're things like last year, an altercation I had, or the previous month, maybe I could look into an argument I had with my dad or my mum or whatever it might be. So being able to not just do in the moment healings, but go back a little ways, you know, and pick which ones I wanted to focus on. So I have an ability to sort of bring in those energies, right? They don't have to be all activated inside of me in the immediate. So I was experimenting a bit with that, just kind of almost playing around with it. Not very responsible, right? It just be a little bit more focused. And I kind of opened myself up to whatever's here, right? So I'm in my dining room. My husband and my daughter are out there. Daddy-daughter play date on a Sunday afternoon. I'm like, okay, let's give this a go. I'm going to see if I can open up to support my dad. So he's in a difficult way. This is quite, you know, a couple of years ago now. He's in a difficult way. I would like to be able to support him. I really want to be able to move past my frustration and anger with it. There's a couple of examples I can lean on, and I'll open up to that. So I did. And I started to track an enormous amount of grief in my body. And I was like, great, this is going to be from early childhood, all this, you know, this is what I'm expecting. And obviously it's very painful. So there's a part of you that's like, yay. And there's a part of you that's like, oh God, this is really painful. So it's a bit of a dichotomy in that respect. But I'm like, yeah, gung ho, let's go into this. And as I'm opening up the grief, I'm realizing, oh, this isn't my grief. This is not grief that's attached to me. It's within me. I'm holding it, but it actually isn't mine. And I can't describe how I understood that to be the case. It's just, it feels separate from me. It's both within me and ingrained and attached. And also, it's like it's not created by me. It didn't start with me. It's like I just took it on, like picked it up. You know, it's that kind of sensation. And so I'm realizing that I'm processing someone else's grief, and I'm thinking, oh, collective consciousness, maybe, you know, I'm starting to get the gist that you can bring other energies into your body, and it can feel very real, because it is, you're processing other waves of collective pain. And then quite out the blue, on my left side above me, a woman appeared. And I was not used to having this happen. I was a little shocked, but also I felt like I knew her. And in speaking with her, because I was speaking out loud and energetically within my own body, I understood that she was my biological grandmother, who I never met, because my father's adopted. And so what I was processing is an enormous amount of grief that she held. Wow. It was keeping her here. It was keeping her stuck. And I let that move through my body, and I physically moved. I was moving because there was so much moving through my body. I've never experienced anything quite that physical, in terms of the actual, my whole body's moving, and I'm letting it go through. Obviously I'm at like drowning in tears, like it's just coming through. And it only took about 1 minute or so from what I can kind of recollect. But we had an exchange within that where I understood that I was allowing this to be processed on her behalf. And she gave me the insight that she didn't want to give up my dad. So that's what I understood. I had no understanding, no way of validating that. My dad was not in touch with any of his biological family. So I took that as, right, okay, that's fine. I've done that thing now. It really scared the shit out of me, I'll be honest. So after that, I didn't do anything for at least a week because I was like, whoa. And I wasn't quite prepared for it. And, this I've learned since, all these kinds of experiences, you get little insights, enough for your brain to be able to kind of comprehend and work through it without it being overloading, too overwhelming. It only came through to me because I was capable of holding it at that time, even if I didn't think I was. And so I processed that grief. And I kid you not, 2 weeks later, my dad messaged me and said, I've contacted the child services and I'm going to try and find my family.
Wow.
Got chills.
Yeah. And I knew it's because it had shifted something within him.
Wow.
Whoa.
He was in his early 60s. He had no intention. He kept saying, one day I'll be ready. One day I'll be ready. One day I'll be ready. He had so much fear. And I haven't mentioned this to him because he's not in this kind of world, right? So he's an engineer, wouldn't land. One day that might not be the case. It might be an opportunity to share that. But he got in touch with his relative, and that relative passed away about 2 weeks after he got in touch with him. And it was so synchronistic. It was so beautiful and so very painful, of course, to have found and then lost immediately. Beyond belief, right? And tragic. But something was resolved there in being able to reconnect,
Clearly.
and opened up such a doorway for healing to happen up and down the line, right? With me, with my daughter now as well, because it carries on through the things that you do to heal the generational trauma. It frees so many more people. It's incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I know we've heard a lot. Well, I've heard a lot on different channels, talking about how, this is the time when generational trauma comes to an end, and that we're all healing it right now. And wow, what a beautiful story! Thank you so much for blessing us with that. It's so cool and so synchronistic. In you processing that grief, clearly you healed some energy and it created some space within your father. And then he was able to, something was lifted, and he was able to then go on his journey of connecting back with, the other family members. Will of that, does it work that it goes up and down? So will of that healed the same energy within your daughter as well? Does it work that way?
It seems that way. Obviously it's difficult to validate, but it feels to me as if there are certain people given the baton, so to speak, of being the processor of a particular thread, that whether it be a really huge wave of emotion that might have been trapped or not been able to be processed, or a trauma that was, woven into that ancestor's life. If you are kind of leading the charge on healing that, and you take up the challenge, right? If you're able to do that, if you've had the education to be able to even do that, right, and open up to that in a safe way and process it, then yeah, it's my belief that you are, removing that pain, that legacy from your kids. They don't have to do that because you've done it. right? And it might be that they have some of mine to process one day. Who knows? That they have, I'm going to try and get it, as much of it as possible. I'm going to try and be as self-responsible as possible, so they have as little to do as possible. So I think they're going to be busier with other things like the survival of the planet and species, maybe. I don't know. But probably, yeah. I think they're going to have other things to need to focus on. So, I'll do as much cleanup work as I can on myself. But I think there is just so very much generational trauma that hasn't been touched yet, that actually, the generations, the adults that are here now, there are, I think, many more people than realize are being given that opportunity to heal this now. And it is something I'm hearing more people talk about. It is something that I feel is, a little underserved out there as well, in terms of there not being too many people speaking confidently about it, having done it for many years, having cultivated a process to be able to do this, which MSU's work fits in perfectly. It is applicable across the board. It's not just inner child healing. It works for generational healing. Arguably for me, and in my experience, it works for past life healing as well. So yes, it's my belief that the more we are able to alchemize, the less our children will have to pick up. That can only be a good thing.
Yeah, I wish I had the those insights to be able to tell where it all comes from, like this, and maybe I will in the future as I open more. This is really for anyone who's like me or who's listening, that's like, if I don't know that I'm doing ancestral healing right now, the beautiful thing about the work that we do is you don't necessarily need to know. The important part is being able to open and process the energy that's there. And if you have the awareness and maybe the psychic ability and gifts, you might be able to see where it really comes from. A lot of the stuff that I've been working through within the last couple of weeks, I have no idea where it's from. I have no idea if it's generational. I don't know. The beautiful thing that you learn is you don't need to know. All you need to do is know what to do with it. And the truth is this is here for me right now. If I did know where it's from, great. I'll probably be able to work through it maybe a little easier and quicker. But I don't need to do any of that. I don't need to sit down and figure it all out. That's the beauty of the work we offer, is you can just open and process the energy and alchemize it. And maybe, I'm sure, and this is a question that I'd love to ask you. I'm sure that in the 2 years that I've been healing all the stuff, I'm sure I must have healed some aspects of generational trauma. It does work like that, correct?
Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. Yes, exactly. And there are many more people, I think, that are having your experience, Danny. Yeah, my husband included, actually, where you experience it on a really visceral level. You experience it in your body. You don't necessarily label it as this or that. It is, I'm moving through this grief or this anger or this, whatever the trauma is related to, and whatever, emotions have manifested. I'm just allowing that to be alchemized. It all works in the same way. It all gets alchemized in the same way. So for me, it's helpful because it helps me understand where I can connect dots between things happening. But I am with you. I don't necessarily need to know. And there are plenty of healings I've done with myself where I don't know. Yeah, it all counts.
Yeah. And this is, so a part of the program that we offer at MSU is open, clear, detach, right? So this is something that Rachel teaches us when there are other energies that come into our fields that are not ours. This is where, and this is probably when I'm going to my mind about it, the open, clear, detach, that's not yours. And then knowing that, and then differentiating that between this has been passed on to me, like the baton has been passed, I think is where I get a little mindy with it. Because then I'm like, well, yeah, I'd love for us to just open that conversation up of when it isn't ours, but then it is ours because we've chosen to alchemize that. the difference between that and then the collective energies. I mean, I would love for us to just dive into that a little bit, because I think that's something we should talk about, because everyone obviously deals with that.
Yeah, so at the moment I have a clear line of sight on that, but I'm open to that evolving, right? I keep getting shown different things, and it brings in new information, maybe deeper truths. So where I'm standing with it now, there is a distinct sense of ownership with some of the energies that are moving through me, whether they're my first-hand experience or maybe second-hand experience if it's my parents, or third or fourth, or however far back you go. There is a sense of understanding that it's still mine, it's still within me, it's still part of the fabric of me, but it wasn't created by me.
Yep.
And I don't know how else to describe like how that feels, but it just feels different. It's there's an ownership in that it's here, it's with me, it's mine, but I didn't create it. And it's the same with the collective consciousness. I am processing less of that than some other people I know. My husband, for example, a lot more goes through him than me that I'm aware of. But when it does, the big difference there for me is it feels enormous. It's like it is multiple people's experience as opposed to one person's experience. It just feels like there's so much more volume to it energetically. That I can that's the distinction for me in terms of how it feels energetically between what's mine, what's generational, and what's collective. That's, it's all very subtle. It's not, you have to kind of fish around for a little bit to occasionally with the collective stuff, you just know, because it feels actually like quite a heavy cloud. It comes actually from a different direction for me. It comes down. Generational sitting within inside me, and so is my own child. So it sits within to come out as part of the alchemization. Whereas collective to me feels like it's coming in, usually from above. So, and occasionally actually from the right-hand side. So there are some subtle differences, but it's just through repeat exposures to those things that I've actually learned that there is a little bit of difference between them, and been able to kind of make that assessment over time.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm glad you brought the conversation here, Ellie, because I think it's really important. And your heart will know.
Yeah.
And if it doesn't, it's okay. That means you're not there. You're not there yet. You're not there, or you may never need to know. And one of the things that, Rachel always talks about is two notes next to each other on a piano. They can sound very similar to a very untrained ear, but the more that you refine your awareness, and the more that if you play piano again and again and again, there's a very big difference between two notes. But to somebody who's never heard a piano before, they wouldn't be able to tell the difference. It would sound exactly the same if they, slipped a key on one chord. They wouldn't realize. And so it's just a case of, if you're not there, don't worry, just keep doing the work, and maybe you'll get there one day, and maybe you won't, and that's okay. But your heart always knows, and you can never clear away anything, open, clear, detach. You can never clear anything that is yours. And so it's a beautiful invitation that I'm taking away from this, Emily. So thank you for sitting with, okay, this is mine. It's like, it feels like there's another step. Drop in. Is this mine? Yes, this is mine. Great. Now I'm going to ask, okay, where does it feel like it comes from? Is it something that I feel like I created, or does this feel like it got passed down? So that's a beautiful question that I'm going to ask myself next time I'm working through something. And that never comes from the mind for anyone listening. This is what we teach you and guide you through, is questions that you ask from your heart, from your soul, and let that part of you guide you.
Yeah, I think this is super fascinating, because I have always felt my entire life that I have this like dark cloud that's always following me around. And, as I've been doing this entire healing process through, this work that we teach and guide. One of the big programs that I run is just wanting to die. And that's been with me for a very long time. And every time I go into it, I realize, oh, okay, this is what I absorbed from my mother for 100%. But then I also created my own stuff as a result of that. So even though I've heard her my entire life saying all that stuff, I absorbed those programs. But then what did I create as a result of it? Because it was so heavy. So even that, there are there are nuances to that too. It's not, and I think this is our mind works. It's got to be this or that, or it has to be this or that. It's like, no, this is where it all is in the gray area. It's not black and white. And so, yeah, I can feel too of like, okay, this is her stuff, but then this is what I've created as a result of that as well. Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I feel the same with my self-hatred programs. That's generational. Absolutely. But I made it my own.
Yeah.
You know, it wasn't just handed to me. It's also something I've had a huge hand in creating and molding and evolving. And so that's my responsibility. It's almost not it's almost for me not a generational thing anymore. It's actually, this is very firmly sitting with me and feels part of me in a way that generational healing doesn't necessarily feel like it fits with that particular thing. So you're right, there's bits in between, there's kind of a blend of this, a blend of that, and we don't necessarily have to have really clear distinctions unless we really want to. Some of it is a bit nuanced. And I wanted to speak as well, Ellie, to the kind of part you alluded to a little bit about what we're opening up to, because that, as well as having the distinctions, there's also, well, if this isn't mine, then what am I opening up to? Is it generational? Is it something else? And part of that is being able to ensure you've got the safety first. So some of what we learn in this, in the MSU work, is connecting with your heart, knowing what's you, knowing what's from your heart, allowing yourself to build a relationship with your heart and rely on it, have that trusting bond that says, no, this isn't okay, this isn't right, or yeah, totally, open door, right, this is absolutely for you. And spending time building that connection and being able to rely on your self-connection, your self-relationship is a really important part of this. I feel going in blind to it and just being like open to everything, you can get all sorts of things popping in that feel a bit familiar. We've all had probably war experiences in our generational traumas, right, and our set that we've got. But it doesn't mean that something coming in that feels similar to that is definitely yours, right? It's being able to build in that level of safety and discernment before just opening right up to any old thing. And that's been a really key lesson for me in moving more intentionally into some of this work around the generational healing, is to ensure I've got the energetic protections, and we're already powerful. We're already connected with our hearts and powerful. So being able to say certain things out loud to ensure my space is clear, for example, when I say it from my heart and I'm injecting my power, the power I am, into that space, allows me to be able to create a space where there won't be interference, where I'll be able to very easily discern if something's in there that's not for me or meant to be there, or is not for the highest good of me or anyone else. So getting really clear with that for me has become a really essential piece and like a prerequisite to sitting down and doing any kind of work, actually.
Just yesterday, I was on taking my dog for a walk, and we passed this tree, and I was like, oh, this tree is really cool. Let me go sit down and like drop in with it. And as I did, it just didn't feel good. And it's one of these trees. It's super cool. It's like growing over a boulder, and it's like kind of dead, but still alive. And it's really big. And it's a tree that I think a lot of people come to at like nighttime and hang out and maybe do things that I wouldn't do anymore or ever. And I kind of got that sense. And I never would have thought about twice about that. I would have just kind of sat there and, well, probably wouldn't actually sit there and drop in with a tree, but I wouldn't have thought to like feel into, well, what's actually going on in this area? Is this a good place to focus my heart energy? Or is there going to be like some other stuff here? And it was that discernment piece. And as I sat there, I was like, something about this place just doesn't feel right. And this has been a journey for me to actually, as you said, building that relationship with yourself and then trusting it, trusting that what you're feeling in this moment in your heart, like, oh, this is my guidance. And Ellie and I have done multiple podcasts on this, and I think we need to do another one because we're both learning this more and more and more. It's like, oh, to trust that when something doesn't feel quite right, to have that discernment within your heart and go, no, this isn't that there's fear there. I'm not afraid right now. It's that the guidance that I'm getting is maybe not the best thing to do. So honor that and trust it. And yeah, so that was exactly what you said there, like that discernment piece of connecting to yourself, discerning is this for my highest good right now? And yeah, I've been learning that, and it feels pretty good to start really trusting myself and my heart.
Yeah, absolutely. It's central, right? To be able to, that's the stability we create for ourselves, is coming from that place, and being able to actually then from that place open to all the coincidences, all the serendipitous stuff, all the things that are for us that are just like, oh, that fitted in perfectly. Oh, that's coming at the right time. Oh, that person gave me the most amazing message, and all the divine timing comes in when we come from that really sure-footed space of like, I've got me, through the work being discerning, but also actually, God, that really hurt, or something did come up in me, so I'm going to self-nurture in this moment. That's my responsibility right now, is I'm going to do that. So that is absolutely right on, and it takes some practice and some of those experiences, exposures, and it's much like growing our intuition. The more you use it, the more it grows, evolves, you create a connection with it. So being able to develop that discernment is really key. With the example you gave, Danny, like there is, from some of my own experiences, and there might be more reasons around this kind of stuff, but there are places on the earth that don't feel particularly comfortable. And with trees, it's not the tree itself, right? There's no bad trees, just like there's actually no bad humans. They were all originally a pure being, and and then corrupted, to say the least, in many cases. But the tree itself might have been planted on a vortex, that it grows kind of gnarly and it doesn't feel particularly good. And there are spots in the earth that balance out all the great spots in the earth. And there are also, and you can discern, actually, no thanks, I don't really want to exchange energies with that particular tree because it's not on a particularly life-giving area on the land. The other thing, though, that I think sounds more likely, with given what you described around people going there and doing things that maybe aren't the best, right? The most healthy or loving. That's what I've come to realize, because there are many places like that in the UK and around where I live, even though I live in a very affluent, lovely area, right? There's pockets where the land is abused, and really abused. And what I've actually started to do with those moments I've discerned, oh, this doesn't feel good. I actually did that at Stonehenge, which is a really big, there's so much painful energy there. It's unbelievable. That I actually start in my own way praying for the earth and sending in vibrations from my heart to try and balance out what's there, because she's us and we are her, right? And the only reason we're all evolving right now is because it's not just because it's time, it's because Earth is evolving, and she's like, you're coming or not, and people are making their choices. That's the one thing that the elites can't really stop, right? We've got a whole Earth on the side of the light going, yeah, it's time now, so let's get going. And so in reverence to her, and through my own discernment of being able to go, oh no, this doesn't feel good, I don't want to connect with this, is also if I can't stay there in the moment, can I come home, connect with my heart and send it there? Because we're that powerful. We don't have to be in the immediate vicinity. You know, we can do that and help in those ways to balance that out. That, you know, talking about generational healing, where we come from, well, we come from the earth. She is the original mother. Like, she's the reason, other than the sun and some other things that are perfectly aligned, you know, that mean that we actually breathe air and can walk this land and have a life and a consciousness. And so I've come to realize that actually that is a really important piece as we evolve, is to recognize where she needs some help, where people are abusing her. And yeah.
As I walked away, I had the thought, oh, well, maybe you should stay and help alchemize the energy.
Mm.
And I did have that thought, and then as I was with that, it was like, you can always come back. Like, we walk past that tree like all the time, and it was like, it felt like that was a time for just understanding the discernment between what feels good and what feels bad. There's always an opportunity to go back, and I didn't even obviously think about coming home and sending light there, but just I had the thought of like, now I can come back when I'm like, it feels like the right time, and maybe help clear up some of the, because as you said, it's not the tree, it's the area around the tree, that or people have been, I'm sure, doing stuff. I think there's some like graffiti on the rocks. I'm not sure. I can't remember exactly what I saw and stuff. But it definitely felt a little funky. But that's a beautiful reminder to just, you can even leave the space, find your own self, find your own heart, and send that energy there. We're not brought up in a place, in a world that, you know, deems us that powerful. We're so brainwashed and manipulated to not be open to anything like that. And I know a few years ago, I would have been like, oh, bullshit, there's no way that's possible. But now I'm like, I believe it 100%. I believe it.
Yeah.
And I'm with you. I'm exactly the same. You know, less than 5 years ago, not on the radar. And how much you can then in a short space of time, if you just open up and see what's already there. It's all there.
Yeah. And going back to something you were talking about connecting to the heart, you know, I was just editing this clip for Rachel, and she was talking about facing your fears, and she's like, why the hell would you do that? She's like, that's scary. She's like, but when you're connected to your divinity, when you're connected to your soul, then whatever fear shows up, you have the power to. It's about anchoring into that, and then going into everything, knowing that when you're anchored to, most people are just going unanchored. It's like going into the ocean, you got no life vest. Like, you're gonna drown. The waves are going to eat you. But then when you have a life vest on and you're anchored to a ship, you know, then whatever is coming your way, you got it. So really beautiful.
Yeah, that's beautiful. Yeah, Rachel was just full of gold, right? Just full of gold. Love it. Love that.
Love it. Amazing. Well, to anybody at home, if you ever want to work with Emily, honestly, can I tell you something? I can just listen to you speak. Like, if you just had a podcast called Emily Speaks, I would just listen to it. So much wisdom, and I just also love your voice. Anyways, if any of you want to work with Emily one-on-one, join a group class, Danny, anybody at Master of Self University, please set up a free consultation with us. We are doing a group class that's coming up at the end of May. Few seats available. So do a consultation, learn more about that. Check out Rachel's book, 20 Universal Ways of Oneness. It is on Amazon. And join our free Discord community where we all share what we're moving through, what we're going through, and things like that. And like, share, subscribe, comment. It really helps us to keep doing this this podcast for free. And until next time, we'll see you guys then. Bye.
Bye.